So welcome everybody to this webinar on the third in the series of instructional approaches for bimodal teaching. And this one is on instructional practices, some effective strategies in being able to give your course in a bimodal context. So my name is Lori. I'm one of the specialists working at TLSS, and I'll be your host today. And I'm joined this afternoon by my colleague, Adrian, who will be chatting and answering some of your questions in the chat. I will be stopping periodically to check to see if there are any questions that should be answered right away or live that I can answer. If not, we will also, like I said, have a question period at the end. So as you know, we're offering a new series of trainings that are set in the context of offering a new teaching option in the fall of 2021 and in the winter also, the bimodal teaching. So this webinar is the third in a series on preparing for bimodal teaching. The other complementary webinars on various topics, you can attend those by going to our website, and our website address will be given to you at the end of the webinar. And on the website, you can find a lot of resources as well as a list of upcoming webinars that you can register for. So what is bimodal teaching approach? As we saw in the two previous webinars in the series, it's about combining in real time or synchronously, two teaching spaces. We have the in-class teaching space and remotely at a distance at the same time. So our learning outcomes for today is making sure that you're aware of the straightforward principles for organizing important information for a bimodal approach, that you're aware of the technical aspects that are essential for launching and leading a bimodal meeting or class, that you know how to plan your communication strategies with the students, and that you're aware of the different facilitation strategies that encourage active participation that encourages the active participation by all students. And in the end, just as an aside, those strategies are not very different from what you've used in the past. And hopefully you'll see that by the end of the seminar. So we divided the time in the classroom into 4 phases. We have phase 0 that we call it, which is the time before classes start. We then have phase 1, which is just before the class, just before the meeting, once you get to class before it starts. Then we have during the meeting, and finally at the end of class. It's really, you see here, check and sanitize. Right now, it's really important that you note that we don't know what sanitary measures will or should be in place by the time we go back to campus and in the classrooms. So this webinar is not going to address those issues. Any information that we get will be shared with you as soon as we get it. We'll be emailing all faculty and posting that information on our website. Any information that you have is probably the same information that we have right now. So let's get started. During your synchronous teaching time, your group will essentially be split in 2, as we talked about. One group is going to be in front of you in class on campus, and another larger group is going to be following your class at a distance, synchronously or live. It's therefore important to put in place the means to try to eliminate that physical divide. The virtual campus, Brightspace, will be your ally in trying to anchor your course in a common space where all students will have access to important aspects of your course. If you participated in the webinar on virtual learning spaces, the strategies to foster student engagement, you reviewed some important elements to consider when developing a virtual learning space. So we invite you to visit our website and the resources related to this aspect of the course to learn more and to access a wealth of resources on that student engagement part. So we are going to quickly revisit some of those important points on student engagement. And one of the important parts is the making contact before the first class. We highly recommend that you open your virtual space before your first synchronous meeting with students and send them an email to your students, inviting them to visit the site to get all the important information for the first meeting. And that important information includes what format you're going to be using, Zoom or Teams or any other platform, how to connect, and all that important information. So ideally, you would do that about a week before your first meeting. And then again, we call it as a reminder about 24 hours before your class is set to start. And that email should include the link, at least for that one first meeting, on how to access the platform for your meeting. This isn't just a reminder though, because as we all know, there's some students who register for classes for a variety of reasons. They're on a wait list, they didn't know they could make it, so on. They might register very shortly before class. So this would not just be a reminder, but would be a first email for some of those students. And it's a really good way it gives them the impression that they're included in the class and that it helps them look forward to starting class when they get this information in advance, and it lowers the stress level for them and decreases the work for you. You're less likely then to be inundated by emails from students saying, how do I access the class? You also want to look at limiting the visible content. So limiting what students can access on Brightspace. We highly recommend that the Brightspace, the virtual space that you have, should only have a few visible sections. So the most important ones for that first class: the welcome message, the course outline, and the section that talks about how to prepare for the first meeting, before a first meeting preparation, anything along those lines. And why do we highly recommend that only certain sections be visible? It's really to avoid having students feel overwhelmed by all the content. Seeing everything all at once, they can feel overwhelmed and discouraged, thinking there's just too much to go over. Also, and as important, it's to help minimize the chances that they'll miss the important information that they need to know for the first class. You're inundated by information, it's easy to miss some important parts of the information. So the welcome message is really important because it's there to catch the attention, create interest, motivate the students to learn. And it can be done as a text, in text fashion, using a video or an audio note of you introducing yourself. It's also important to present the complete course syllabus and an invitation to read it before the first class. It can even be interesting to add a small syllabus quiz with strategic questions to check whether the students have actually read it, and taken the opportunity to introduce a first tool, which would be the quizzing tool. I know that in my class, one of the things that I've done, I knew that they were going to be working in groups. I had divided the groups already, so I used that opportunity to have them meet up while in class. And we know the first class is where you're going to have most of your students attend. So took advantage, had them meet breakout rooms of their groups, and together they could answer the quiz questions. So it was a way for them to get to know each other, meet up for the first time, and at the same time, take that mini quiz on the syllabus, which increases the likelihood that they'll actually read the information that's in the syllabus. You can also, especially before class starts, but you could do it during the first class, you could take advantage and propose a small survey for the students to use or to fill out to determine what kind of technological knowledge they might have, what tools they've used in the past, what kind of, do they have a reliable Wi-Fi connection, so on, so that you can better prepare your activities and also know whether or not you need to go over any specific information with the students. In the before or first meeting section, really important to outline the format, the specifics of the course, and your expectations for student participation. Also providing clear information on technology and connection processes for distance learners. We're going to, for most of what we're presenting right now, a handout will be provided to you at the end of this webinar. So we will be providing a handout on what we suggest you should have on Brightspace in the virtual campus in preparation for your class. So we also encourage you to consult our resources, our website on designing your virtual learning space, one of our webinars, and review the key ideas from that webinar. So we now go from preparing for the first class to getting to class for the first time before class starts. So you'll have, like we did in the past, you'll have approximately 10 minutes to set up the technology components that will allow you to bridge the gap between your students in the classroom and those who will be joining remotely. We'll be, in the following slides, we'll be going over the important steps to take to prepare for teaching your class. Also know that in case of any kind of technical problems, all classrooms are equipped with a telephone to reach the technical team at extension 5900, and the extension number is clearly indicated on the telephone. Using the microphone, where to put it on your body and so on, we'll be talking about that at the end, closer to the end of this webinar, but do know that the microphone should be in the podium, and they're now rechargeable batteries that we're using, so rechargeable microphones, and they will be in their charging box in the podium. So before I move on to the next slides, I'm going to ask Adrian whether there are any questions that I should answer right now.
There aren't any questions in the chat as of yet, Lori.
Perfect. Thank you. So in the next few slides, we are going to be looking at how to activate the technical equipment. And we're going to be looking at the touchscreen functions, management of the camera view, and sound management, so the microphone. So here's what the new, well, it's the touchscreen like we've been used to that we were using to turn on the system, lower the screen, so on and so forth. It just looks a little bit different. The interface looks a little bit different than what we were used to. So in order to get started, you will need to open the doors and use the podium. So you'll need your access card. And we're going to familiarize you now with the functions of the touch screen. So the first part you can see here is you need to choose your language, French or English. And it will now also ask you, this extra step is, are you sure, confirming whether or not you want to actually start the system. So obviously we'll click yes at that point. And then you'll see the screen with the turning circle telling you that the system is warming up. Once it gets to a certain point and the system is warmed up enough, you will now see this screen. The only difference is, instead of system shutdown, if it's still warming up, it'll tell you the system is warming up. Once it's completely warmed up, you will then have this button here for system shutdown. So this is the touch screen. Once you've started the system, this is what you will see in a typical classroom. This button is for the camera options. And I'm going to give you more details on this function here once you press it on the next slide. So I'll just go over the main features right now on this first page of the touch screen. I'm also going to be, these are the sources that you can choose to project. I'm going to be focusing on the podium computer. There are other options, just for the sake of brevity and to make sure that we go over all the information that we need to in this webinar. If you are interested in bringing your own laptop, connecting wirelessly, or using the document projector, please contact us at TLSS and we'll be more than happy to go over those functions with you. Like I said, I'm going to be focusing on the podium computer, which is, the functions are basically the same for all of them. They're just some little details for each that might be a little bit different. So everything, the microphone and the projector and so on, is mostly configured, is well configured for the podium computer. So the sound coming from the computer on the podium and to the students, the camera capture from the classroom, so on. The next part is the microphone. This is to mute your microphone or unmute it. The volume is not the microphone volume, but the volume in class. How loud are the speakers in class? Obviously, lower the sound, increase the sound, mute the sound in class. Your microphone would still work, but the rest of it would not work. You would be muting. And the microphone is already calibrated or adjusted for its specific classroom that it's in. This is to turn on or off the lamp from the projector, basically turning the screen black or projecting something. And these are the buttons to lower or to bring up the screen at the front of the class. These are what you will see when you press the camera function. And it's to adjust the camera view. So these are the actual adjustments, right, left, up, down, to position the camera so that you can see the students can see what you want them to see. At all times, as you're adjusting, you will see a preview of what the camera is seeing here in the middle, a live preview of what the camera is seeing. Your zoom in and out, and the speed or precision of the adjustments. The default is a little turtle, so slower adjustments, meaning more precise adjustments, or the rabbit, which would be less precise adjustments, but quicker, depending on how quickly you need to pan the camera or increase the zoom level or decrease it. These are the presets. There are 4 presets set up for each classroom. They should be sufficient. If ever you need something different in the presets, you would need to contact TLSS, and then we'd be able to get you in contact with the people who would need to set those for you. And finally, this is the button to press to close that preview for the camera and to bring you back to the main screen. This would be the main screen, and as you can see, it's a little bit different. This is for a classroom that would have double the amount of tech, so double the projectors, double the cameras, so on. For all intents and purposes, for the majority of profs, you will be seeing the initial screen that I showed you with just this one here. Most classes are equipped with pretty much just one camera and projector. If you are going to be in a class that has more than one and you need more assistance, you want more support, please contact us at TLSS and we will guide you through that process. So again, Adrian, I'm going to open it up for any questions that might have come up in the chat on the touchpad part.
Yeah, great timing, Laurie. So someone just asked, what is a preset? And can you give some examples of like what a preset would be?
I can't show you any examples, but the presets are where the camera would be zoomed in and positioned in a specific area of the classroom. So for example, I would say as an example, if you know that you're going to be teaching using the whiteboard or the blackboard, and that's all you want the students to be able to see, that could be potentially a preset. So that the camera would be zoomed in appropriately so that the students are seeing what you want them to see. It'd be positioned appropriately that way. So you don't have to do that every time you come into the class if you know that that's what you're going to be doing throughout the whole semester. I would say the best thing to do is when you have the time, is to just check out what the presets are set for, and you'll be able to see that just with the preview window in the middle of the screen. This one here. So if you press preset 1, you'll be able to see what it's set to. I hope that answers the question.
Great. Also, another question, is there a sample or preview photo of the preview of what the preview screen looks like with the view of the classroom?
You won't see that the cameras are not set up to see the actual class, like the students in the classroom. The cameras are pointing towards the front. So anytime your preview, you will always see a live preview here. If you're in this screen, you will, it's hard to, I don't have a preview available here, but you will be able to see live what the camera is seeing. So as you're adjusting, you'll be able to see where the camera is pointing and the zoom level and so on. So the cameras are set up to be able to see the front of the room, and very little of the panoramic. They are not set up to be able to see the students for confidentiality reasons.
Great. And one more, and I think a lot of people are probably wondering this, is do the remote participants see both us and our PowerPoint slides?
They will see what the camera sees because you're sharing from the podium. They will see what the camera sees in the corner, as well as if you're sharing your screen with the with your PowerPoints. So like you're seeing now, I think my camera's on. So the picture of me speaking, that's the classroom view, that preview here that they see. That's what they're going to see in the bottom, unless you turn that off. And then the main screen will be your PowerPoint presentation. So it's very, very similar to what was happening when you were teaching from home or from wherever you were teaching at a distance. That picture at the bottom is what the camera sees. So what my camera right now from my computer is seeing me in the corner. The classroom would be showing you a view of what the classroom is set up for. And then the main screen, the biggest part of the screen, is what you're sharing on your screen. Did that answer the question?
I think so. There are a lot of other questions, so I'm not sure if you want to carry on or take some more.
Are they based on the touch screen?
There is a question about the presets again. So what happens when it comes to presets if we have to share classrooms with other profs? I assume that you won't be able to assign, you won't be assigned one classroom only for you.
No, which is why there's a variety of presets. So I think for most profs, like I know for me when I'm teaching, I likely will not be using any presets because I don't have anything aside from being in front of the class, interacting with the students or presenting my material. So I'm pretty sure that it'll be very, very basic. For most profs, I think the basic setup will suffice. It's going to be, these presets are really going to be for those profs who have something more detailed that they need for a variety of reasons. So there are 8 presets. I don't anticipate that there will be a need for most profs to use the presets. So I mean, they can always play around. I'm sure there are options for increasing those presets if needed, but for now, they're not anticipating there being a larger need than these 8 presets, because most profs will be able to use generally what's already available.
Great. One more is we're asked to record live sessions currently, and will we be required to record the bimodal sessions? And is the classroom technology equipped to do this?
Yes, because it's going to be, if you're, for example, if you're using Zoom like you would at home, it's equipped. If you've got it set up to record to, you have to set it up to record to the cloud. If not, it'll record to the computer the podium computer. And then by the end of the day, that everything is wiped off that computer. But like you're using Zoom now, like I'm using Zoom now, it's recording. So it's set up for that. There will also be something to replace Echo 360 that will be announced very, very shortly for the live capturing for those of us who are used to using that kind of system. Now, as far as I know, nobody can force any prof or anybody to record their sessions, but it is best practice to record the sessions to make those classes available. We do know we have a lot of international students. We have students who, for a variety of reasons, may not be able to make it to class. They may get sick, maybe they're caregivers, whatever the reason may be. So it is best practice, generally speaking, to record your sessions so that students can access them if they, for some reason, had to miss class. So, but nobody can force you to record. It is, but we highly, highly encourage it for engagement and for accessibility issues.
Great, and that was kind of a two-part question, Lori. So they're asking, how do we manage student confidentiality? Which brings up another question, which is, can the remote students see the in-class students?
No. Remote students cannot see the in-class students because the camera is not positioned that way. For student confidentiality, depends on what you're talking about. There are ways like we would with Zoom to be able, like, for example, right now I'm presenting and I've got my gallery view for Zoom videos turned off. I don't see any videos right now. So there are ways of minimizing that if we need to. With the chat, there are different things, you know, and we'll go over some of the different things, ways that that can be managed. So I will be going over that a little bit later in the webinar. So for confidentiality, I would say the best thing is to contact us at TLSS so that we can go over, depends on the class, depends on what you're looking for, depends on which parts, if it's everything that you want to ensure privacy and all that stuff. So going over it with one of the specialists at the TLSS and so that we have a better sense of exactly what you're looking for and what the requirements are. And then we can work together to come up with the best suggestions for maintaining that student confidentiality while still allowing you to teach your class as you need to.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going. And hopefully I'll answer some of the questions that might still be out there. And if not, like I said, there'll be time at the end for more questions if you have more questions at the end. So in the classroom, we're still in phase one. We're just about to start the class. So starting the virtual meeting is going to be based on the application that you've chosen. So there will be a link on the podium computer with for Zoom and MS Teams. You're going to log in using your UO Access login and password to these platforms. I really, really highly encourage you to write down your password for UO Access somewhere safe. So that you don't forget it. Many of us, if not most of us, have a password manager on our computers already, or we have it set up so that it automatically populates with our password. I know it's happened to me where I've gotten to class and went, oh, I don't remember my password, and then scrambled to try to remember what it was. So write it down somewhere safe, at least for the first time that you get to class. And then once you've logged on, you are going to test to make sure that the equipment is working properly, sound and camera with remote students and everything is working appropriately. And as you would remember, this is like you're teaching like you've been for the last 2 semesters, except now you're in the classroom, you've got the podium, the computer in front of you, but it's the same thing. If you start Zoom, you're going to be using the share screen button to share your presentation. And If you're using Teams, again, you're going to use the share screen button to share your presentation, same way as you would off your laptop or any computer, the computer you were using in wherever you were to do distance teaching. So you've shared your presentation, the microphone's working properly, presentation is up there, the camera is positioned like you want it to be, and you've decided whether or not you're going to record your session, and you start teaching. So now you're in the heat of the action, that we call it. So you're looking to create a space that allows students, be it from a distance or in class, to be able to interact in an equitable manner. And one of the challenges of teaching or learning in a bimodal approach is to be able to develop a functional and equitable communication space. The images provide, the image here provides a reminder of the type of interactions that happen in class. So we have the interaction between the professor and the students at a distance and on campus. And we also have, and also students back to the professor. And then we have the interactions between students, those on campus and those at a distance. So now it's deciding how you need to decide how students will interact with you during the meeting. So your communication norms. There are different approaches you can take. It really is up to you to choose the one that works best for your context based on your students and what your needs are and what your preferences are. So you can choose, and we call this the structured approach. You can choose to take breaks at a set pace, for example, every 8 to 10 minutes to allow, and so every 8 to 10 minutes, you do your activities, you do your teaching. Every 8 to 10 minutes, you allow in-class and remote students to interact with you by raising their hand physically in class or virtually online. So the students know when to expect to be able to ask their questions, and so do you, and there's less chance of interruptions while you're teaching or while the activities are happening. The next one is what we would call a more fluid approach, the technological approach. So using the chat room in the chosen application, and the chat function can be monitored by you, by a TA, by a designated student in class, or by all students in class, where when they see that there's a question, they raise their hand and to say, okay, there's a question in the chat. It's up to you to decide if you're going to use this approach, who will be monitoring the chat. So we call it, this is more fluid. It depends on the situation, and questions can be asked more or less at any time, but still semi-structured. And finally, there's the unstructured approach. So students can engage with you at any time by raising their hands in class or virtually, or by turning on their microphone virtually and asking their questions as they come up. There are pros and cons to each approach. There is no one approach that I can say offhand is the best approach. It really depends on your approach or your preferences, your style, the context, what's being taught, how many students you have, so on. So there's so many different variables that it really is up to you. And again, if you can contact us at the TLSS, and we can help guide you through that decision that you will make based on what is best, that you feel is best for your class. And you want to make sure that you minimize the audio distractors, be it for students in class or online, and you make sure that you let the students know when they can unmute themselves, when they can speak up, and it's making it clear so that everybody's on the same page and there's less chances of confusion and distraction when you're not prepared for it. And that leads us to not just the communication part, but that dynamic learning space where they can interact. So some important messages here. It's important to focus on teaching strategies that, as much as possible, fully engage the students. You want to maximize the use of the tools that are available in the selected web conferencing application. For example, live polling with Zoom for breakout rooms with Zoom or Teams, using the whiteboards, annotations, so on and so forth. Use what you already know. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's not about learning something new, completely new. Again, use what you know to start, and then you can always tweak it and add to it if you want to. And thinking about what adaptations should you make or would you like to make, given that it's a bimodal teaching context. Really, there aren't that many adjustments that need to be made. You're used to teaching students at a distance. Now, the adjustment is making sure that there's not one group of students that is being privileged over the other. Remember, don't reinvent the wheel. Start with what you already know, and you'll be likely pleasantly surprised to see that it will be adequate. And then go from there if you feel that at that point that you need to improve it, or you need to tweak it, or you need to make some changes, by all means, go ahead. Remember, again, at TLSS, we're here to help guide you, to help you find and make the decision as to what will work best given what your context is and what the outcomes you're looking for are. And cut yourself some slack. Do the best that you can, and improve as you go along. What you do now as a good enough approach will likely be good enough for the students and for yourself, with room for improvement as you go along. So I gave you some general information on interaction with students, and probably a lot of you are going, okay, but what does that mean? What does that look like in real life when I'm going to be there with the students? Let's give you some examples. So if you're wanting to poll the students to get their opinions or to check their understanding. So pre-COVID, you would have them raise their hand. You would ask a question in class, they would raise their hand. Some profs who are really well organized might have had some color-coded cardboards that students could raise to indicate a specific answer, or you could use something like Kahoot or anything like that in class where students could answer online. Okay. Now, so that was pre-COVID. Now, up until now, during this COVID phase, everything was done online. So that's where we use the web conferencing platforms, Teams or Zoom, using the live polling, for example, or other online tools, Mentimeter, WooClap, Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, Socrative, those types of web platforms that you could use. Okay, so what's that going to look like potentially in a bimodal approach? Well, the use of a technological tool like you did during COVID makes this type of activity possible and easy to implement. So again, using the live polling in Zoom or Teams, or any of the same tools like I mentioned earlier, WooClap, Mentimeter, Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, any of those can also be used in a bimodal approach. Most, if not all, students have access to at least one portable device. And so the students in class can participate synchronously, as can the students at a distance. They can also participate synchronously. Important note, the students in class for this to work the best way possible, to get the best bang for your buck, they really need to come to class with a technological device, laptop, tablet, smartphone, whatever. And again, like I said, most, if not all, students, and I've taught a few hundred students, I've been using Kahoot and those types of platforms and web apps for a few years now, and I have yet to have a student tell me that they didn't have access to any portable device that they could take to class with them. Important, this is part of your communication strategy, the important messages that you'll give them to prepare for class, letting them know in advance as soon as you can what your requirement is. So you will need to bring a portable device with you to be able to participate fully in class, for example, warning them in advance or letting them know. So a second example, if you want to get them reflecting, so using something, an activity like a think, pair, share. So again, pre-COVID, Really easy. You would have students sitting close to one another, turn around to their neighbor and discuss and then share with the class. Okay. COVID, well, you could use breakout rooms, randomly assigning people to different breakout rooms. You could use the whiteboard or any other sharing tool like Jamboard, Miro, Padlet, any of those apps that you could use to have students share their reflections. Again, what does that look like in a bimodal approach? Well, you could use the same tools as for distance learning or in-class learning. So you could have students in class keeping a distance that they need to, speaking, like discussing with one another, and at the same time, having students at a distance in breakout rooms, discussing with one another. Think pair shares usually aren't a very long activity, so this could work very well in this bimodal approach, using both modalities. Again, same note, if the students in class have their own portable device, the sharing can be a lot more interactive and interesting. And now a third example, working in teams, team discussions, problem solving, case studies to be solved, that kind of stuff, conceptual maps, creating a poster while in class. So again, pre-COVID, really easy to implement. You would have students sitting nearby in a group, or they would move around in the class, sitting together and working on a case study or creating a conceptual map or a poster or whatever. Remotely, again, during COVID, could use breakout rooms. You could either randomly assign them to different groups or have the breakout rooms pre-created, pre-assigned. And then, so they'd get together, work on their project, their activity, and then share with the whole group, either with microphone access or screen sharing or chatting or whatever method that they was available to them. In the bimodal approach, there's the dual approach that we could look at, where you have, like we did with the Think Pair Share, you have students in class who work together, keeping a safe distance, and as well as students at a distance who can work in breakout rooms. And then there's the mixed approach, where and this is where students from in class you'll need to make sure that they have their technological device, their portable device. So all the groups are virtual. On-campus students are included in the breakout rooms, and all students then participate in their own breakout rooms to do the project. And then sharing, as in the COVID option, they could share with the whole group either via microphone access, screen sharing, whiteboard, any other options are possible, sharing it in Brightspace in the virtual campus, so on and so forth. So those are the two options. Usually these take a little bit longer, so it does make sense to divide them within everybody within breakout rooms. And again, you want to make sure that the students in class have a technological device so that the sharing can be more interactive and interesting. So essentially, the sharing of information can come from one of two sources. Like we said, it comes from the professor to the students, and students back to the professor. So reciprocal kind of interaction here, lecturing, visual supports, PowerPoints, multimedia support, so on. And you can have also interaction between students and then back to the professor. So through breakout rooms, microphone access, webcam, chatting, different tools that are out there. So those are the different interactions you can have, professor to students and back, or between students and back to the professor, back to the whole class. I'm going to ask Adrian right now if there are any questions based on the examples that I gave on interactions in class.
Hey, Lori, sorry, the chat has been really busy, so I've been just trying to answer.
And that's why I'm asking now.
Yeah, to answer as many questions as I can and not necessarily listening to you 100% of the time. But I was just answering a question about using a camera, like as an extra device, because this person likes to use an app with a camera, like to use the iPhone as a camera. And from what I understood anyway, is that you can add another device, but I just suggested maybe not planning that for the very first class and then practicing it after the first class to see if you can get set up.
Yeah, or contact if you need it for the first class, contact us at TLSS, and then we can try to see how we can help you test that out before class. There's what some people have done, like with Zoom, for example, if they bring their own laptop or they have their phone that they like to use, because there is the document camera, if that's what you want to show a document. But if it's something else you want to show, you log into Zoom on a separate account on your device. And so you join the class with that device signed into a different account, and then you can use that as your camera. You allow it to share, and then you can toggle between the two. But let's not get in too much ahead of ourselves. If that's something that you're looking at doing, something more detailed than the basics, what we're showing here, please don't hesitate to contact us. And either we already know how to do it, or we can find the information and we can help you prepare for it in advance.
I think that's a really great workaround, Lori, to use that through joining on another device. That's perfect.
And especially if you're already doing that, it's probably because you've already done it at home. So it won't be something that's completely new to you.
Great. I think there are some questions that you may want to save to the end. Some people are asking to unmic themselves. So
okay. Yeah, we'll keep those at the answers. So, confidentiality reasons and all that stuff. So do you want me, are we okay for me just finishing up the presentation, and then we'll take the questions?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So now phase 3, just before leaving the classroom, you're done teaching, with the 10 minutes left, what do you do? So for security reasons, we really, really highly encourage you don't want to leave the accounts open on the classroom computer. Anybody can have access to that theoretically. And also just to make sure that everything works well with the equipment if you've made any tweaks and stuff like that. So make sure you close any application that you've used on the podium computer. You want to it protects your information, and so that the next user doesn't have access to your accounts and can start without having to go through extra steps to log out of accounts and so on, which you would do anyway. Anytime you use any kind of public computer, it's always best practice to log out of any application that you've used to make sure that nothing is left of your own information. You also want to make sure that you store the equipment so that it's fully functional for the next user. So remembering, and yes, there will be a sheet there, a cheat sheet for people to remember what to do once you're in class. We'll also have the handouts that we're going to send you after this webinar, but putting the microphone back in its charging box. There'll be 2 microphones in each room, at least at the beginning, until they start disappearing, but there'll be 2 microphones per classroom, and they'll be in their charging box. So just making sure that you return the microphone to its charging box so that they're always charged fully charged for the next user. The remote control for the PowerPoint and so on, making sure you put it back in the podium also, just so that it doesn't disappear. It is kind of a pain if you don't have your own remote to show up and have to stay by the computer to scroll through your PowerPoint presentation. On the touch screen, you're also going to click on System Shutdown, just to shut everything down, reset everything so that the next user is starting from where they're used to starting, where everybody starts at a basic level. And again, remember, sanitize. We don't know yet what the details are for that. We will definitely share those details of what is expected with sanitation measures as soon as we know. Up until then, we don't know. So I can't even hazard a guess. I can't even hazard any kind of suggestions right now because we don't know what that's going to look like. So we put sanitize here. I put in italics for a reason. We will let you know as soon as we know. So concluding remarks, some really important points to remember. On the technical side, adjust the camera to fit your needs. You can, it's easy to adjust that camera. So for example, somebody was asking about the presets. So if you know you're going to use the chalkboard or the whiteboard, you may need to zoom in so that the remote participants can see the information clearly and not just chicken scratch from a distance. But that will be based on your own needs for your own class. And as I promised earlier for the microphone, making sure that you install the microphone, it's the portable ones with the little clip. It should be centered at the height of your breastbone. So centered on your body at the height of your breastbone. It does not need to be clipped to your beard or your mustache or your lip or your collar. The best place, it's calibrated for having it centered on your body at the height of your breastbone. There'll be less problems with the breathing noises that can happen, the feedback and so on. So breastbone centered on your body, best place, and sanitation wise, a lot cleaner than having it clipped to your beard, for example, for those of us who have a beard. Not me, but you know. So other points to consider on the pedagogical side, really important to plan your synchronous meetings. A really good plan is to it allows you to choose strategies that actively engage students and also allows you to plan strategic and fluid transitions. And when you have a good plan, it allows you to make modifications a little bit more on the fly because you will have prepared already. You'll already have an idea of what you want to get done. And it's a lot easier then to find alternatives if ever something doesn't work well, like we did when we were teaching face-to-face before COVID. Using the appropriate verbal flow, you don't want to speak too fast or too slow. I think people already know that. But it's just a reminder. And like I was telling my teenager as he's preparing, I said, if you think you're speaking too slowly, then probably you're speaking at just the right speed. And he, like his mother, tends to speak quite fast. And finally, people might ask, so how are the students going to know what's being said in class by other students if the students aren't wearing microphones? Like you did when you were face-to-face before COVID, the importance of paraphrasing or repeating the important elements of a question or a comment from the in-class participants. The participants at a distance, if they open their mic and speak, they'll be heard throughout the classroom and by the prof. The students in class, the way I like to see it is, if you can imagine, you have your students at a distance who are in the front row, and you have your students who are in person in class. They're like the students who were at the back of the room back in the day. So the students in the front row, sorry, that's the other way around. You have the students in the back who are from at a distance, and the students in the front, they're your class students in class. Students in class, you can hear them, but the students in the back can't hear them. So you want to make sure that the students in class, that you paraphrase, you repeat their question or their comment. Students at the back, they're having to speak loudly enough already that everybody hears them, or you're asking them to speak louder. So the students at the back, you don't have to worry for the students at a distance that they can be heard, but they won't hear what the students in class will hear. So you're going to paraphrase like you normally would have done in class to make sure that everybody heard the question or the comment when you want to comment or answer that question or comment. So we do have resources to support you. The PowerPoint and additional materials are going to be sent to you by email as soon as possible. We have a new bimodal teaching webpage, which is really the focal point for all the important information, webinar registration, documentation, important information, so on and so forth. And the website is here. And the PowerPoint handout that you're going to receive, all the links are live. So all you have to do is click on them. And finally, for additional and personalized help, please don't hesitate to, or if you have anything that's a little bit different than what we were talking about, please don't hesitate to contact us either by email or by clicking on our website, and we will be more than happy to help answer any questions, find you the resources, find you the answers, guide you, support you in whichever way that we can.